In a small church in rural France, tourists walk past candles and marble altars and suddenly stop. Because above the sanctuary, inside a glass coffin, lies the body of a dead priest. His face appears almost lifelike. He is dressed for mass as though he could rise at any moment. The man inside the glass died more than 160 years ago and appears almost exactly as he did on the day of his death. But something is missing. He was a village priest so famous that more than 100,000 people a year traveled to this tiny French town just to speak with him. Some believed he could read souls. Others claimed the devil attacked him at night. And after his death, church officials opened his coffin and made a disturbing discovery. Parts of the body appeared unusually preserved, but one part of his body had been removed entirely. Today, his corpse remains on public display inside the basilica built around his memory. So who was this mysterious priest? What really happened when investigators opened his tomb? And why does the body of Jean Vianney still attract pilgrims from around the world more than a century after his death? The deeper investigators looked into his remains, the stranger the story became. Long before the pilgrims, the relics, and the glass coffin, Jean Vianney was considered a failure. He was born in France in 1786, only a few years before the French Revolution erupted across the country. The revolution violently turned against the Catholic Church. Priests were hunted, churches were closed, and public worship was heavily restricted. As a child, Vianney sometimes attended secret masses, celebrated in barns or private homes by priests risking arrest. The chaos of revolutionary France shaped him deeply. While much of the country abandoned religion, Vianney became intensely devoted to it. But there was one major problem. He struggled badly in school. By the time he entered seminary, he could barely keep up with his studies, especially Latin, the language required for theology and priestly training. He failed examinations repeatedly and nearly lost his chance at ordination altogether. Some superiors openly questioned whether he was intelligent enough to become a priest. Ironically, the man who would later become one of the most famous confessors in Catholic history could barely pass seminary. But those around him noticed something else. While academically weak, Vianney possessed an unusual seriousness about prayer and discipline. He fasted constantly, spent long hours in church, and developed a reputation for intense personal devotion. Eventually, church authorities made an unusual decision. Despite his academic failures, they ordained him anyway. In 1818, the newly ordained priest was assigned to a tiny farming village called Ars-sur-Formance. At the time, Ars was considered spiritually dead. The village was known for drinking, taverns, dancing, and widespread religious indifference. Few people expected much from the assignment. In many ways, Ars was where an unimpressive priest was sent to quietly disappear. But something strange began happening. Instead of adapting himself to the village, Vianney tried to transform it completely. He slept only a few hours a night, survived on little more than potatoes, gave away possessions to the poor, and spent enormous amounts of time praying inside the church. Then came the confessional. At first, only a handful of villagers came to him. But gradually, stories began spreading beyond Ars. People claimed the priest somehow knew things he should not know. Visitors said he revealed sins they had concealed for years. Others believed he could read souls. Some even claimed he knew details about strangers before they spoke. Within years, pilgrims began arriving from across France, and the obscure priest sent to a forgotten village was becoming something far stranger. By the 1820s, the village of Ars was filling with strangers, farmers, widows, travelers, priests, skeptics. All arrived hoping to meet the parish priest whose reputation was spreading across France. Pilgrims traveled for days just to spend a few minutes inside the cramped wooden confessional of Jean Vianney. Some came because they believed he was holy. Others came because they had heard disturbing rumors. Witnesses claimed Vianney sometimes interrupted confessions to mention sins that had been intentionally hidden. Others said he described events from their past without being told. Some visitors reportedly left the church shaken, convinced the priest had somehow seen directly into their conscience. Whether supernatural, psychological, or exaggerated through decades of retelling, the effect on pilgrims was undeniable. People kept coming. By the 1850s, railway companies were bringing visitors directly to Ars. Inns filled with pilgrims. Religious images of the Curé d'Ars spread throughout France. In a single year, more than 100,000 people reportedly visited the village. And at the center of it all sat one exhausted priest inside a confessional barely large enough to move in. Vianney's schedule became extreme. He often began hearing confessions shortly after midnight and continued for as many as 16 or 17 hours a day. Witnesses described him emerging pale, weak, and barely able to walk. Yet he continued. But as his fame spread, so did another disturbing series of stories. According to Vianney himself, something attacked him at night. Furniture shook violently. Loud banging echoed throughout the rectory. His bed allegedly trembled. At times, fires reportedly broke out in his room. Vianney believed these disturbances were demonic attacks. He referred to the entities simply as the grappin, the hook. Some believers dismissed the stories. Others became convinced the devil was attempting to stop the priest from hearing confessions. According to witnesses, Vianney believed the attacks became most violent shortly before the arrival of an important sinner preparing to repent. To supporters, this was evidence of spiritual warfare. To skeptics, it sounded like exhaustion, stress, or religious hysteria. But regardless of the explanation, the legend of the Curé d'Ars continued growing. And eventually, the man who had nearly failed out of seminary became the most famous parish priest in France. By the summer of 1859, decades of fasting, sleeplessness, and endless hours in the confessional had destroyed Vianney's health. Witnesses described him as thin, exhausted, and increasingly frail. Yet the crowds never stopped coming. On August 4th, 1859, Jean Vianney died inside the rectory beside the Church of Ars. He was 73 years old. News of his death spread rapidly across France. Thousands traveled to Ars to see the body. Some touched rosaries and religious objects to the corpse. Others attempted to cut pieces from his clothing as relics. The priest of Ars became something far larger than a local pastor. But the strangest part of the story came later. Years after his burial, church officials investigating his canonization ordered the tomb opened. Inside the coffin, investigators reportedly discovered that portions of the body had resisted decay better than expected. Rumors spread rapidly. Some claimed the body was incorrupt. Others exaggerated the report further, describing the corpse as almost untouched by death. But the reality was far more complicated. While parts of the remains appeared unusually preserved, decomposition had absolutely occurred. Over time, additional preservation work became necessary. Then came the detail many visitors still find unsettling today. One part of Vianney's body had been removed entirely: his heart. The organ was preserved separately inside an ornate reliquary and eventually became one of the most important relics associated with the saint. Meanwhile, the rest of the body was prepared for public display. A wax mask was placed over the skull. Wax hands were added. Priestly vestments concealed the remaining relics beneath. The result was eerie. Visitors no longer saw skeletal remains. Instead, they saw what appeared to be a sleeping priest lying silently inside glass. Today, visitors entering the Basilica of As often don't realize what they're about to see. The church appears ordinary at first: candles, stone walls, quiet pilgrims praying in silence. Then people look upward toward the sanctuary, and suddenly, suspended above the altar inside a glass shrine, is the body of the curé d'Ars. For many first-time visitors, the experience is deeply unsettling. The priest appears strangely lifelike. His body is dressed in elaborate vestments. His hands rest peacefully across his chest. At first glance, it looks as though the body never decayed. But that impression is partly an illusion. Underneath the vestments and wax reconstruction are the actual remains of Jean Vianney. The visible face is a wax mask placed over the skull after the exhumations. The hands are wax as well. This surprises many pilgrims because photographs online are often presented as proof of complete incorruptibility. The reality is far more complicated. Part relic, part reconstruction, part preservation, and part devotional art. Nearby stands the small rectory where Vianney lived. Pilgrims can still see his bed, his confessional, and the narrow rooms where he reportedly slept only a few hours each night. Even more unsettling is the separate reliquary containing his heart. Removed from the body after death, the heart became one of the most important relics in Ars and eventually traveled internationally, drawing enormous crowds of Catholics who came to venerate it. Over time, Ars transformed completely. What had once been an obscure rural village became one of the most famous Catholic pilgrimage sites in Europe. And yet, perhaps the strangest part of the story is this. Jean Vianney spent much of his time believing he was unworthy. He considered himself intellectually inadequate and spiritually weak. But after death, the priest nobody expected to succeed became one of the most recognizable saints in the Catholic world. More than 160 years after his death, the body of Jean Vianney still lies in silence above the altar in Ars. Tourists continue entering the basilica expecting to see an ordinary church. Instead, they encounter a dead priest displayed inside glass. Some leave convinced they have witnessed evidence of sanctity. Others see an elaborate reconstruction shaped by relic culture and centuries of Catholic tradition. And that tension is exactly what makes the story of Curé d'Ars so fascinating. The body was not perfectly incorrupt. The visible face is wax. The heart was removed and preserved separately. And yet none of that diminished the devotion surrounding him. If anything, it intensified it, whether viewed as a mystic, a psychological phenomenon, or simply a man of extraordinary discipline. The Curé d'Ars transformed a forgotten French village into one of the most important pilgrimage sites in Catholic history. And even today, beneath the dim lights of the basilica, the priest of Ars still waits in silence inside his glass tomb. If you found this story interesting, please like the video. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, please subscribe.